Welcome to Within the Frame, where we bring the most pressing issues across the globe into focus. I'm Kim Mok-yeon. South Korea is once again debating how young is too young to face criminal punishment. The government has begun gathering public opinion on whether to lower the age threshold for juvenile offenders exempt from criminal punishment from under 14 to under 13. Now, supporters say the law needs to reflect concerns over serious juvenile crime, while critics question whether tougher punishment will actually prevent young people from reoffending. The debate also raises broader questions over international standards, rehabilitation, and victim protection. So should Korea lower the age of criminal responsibility, and what else needs to change if it does? To delve deeper into this, we are joined in the studio by Attorney An Junseong to my left. Big welcome.
Thank you.
And also joining us is Attorney Kim to my right. Good to see you.
Good evening.
So let's start the discussion first with Attorney Kim. So with this issue in focus, why do you think the government is actually revisiting the age of criminal responsibility at this time around?
So there is a strong public sentiment that the outcome of these juvenile crime cases simply aren't fair. And honestly, as a lawyer, I think the sentiment is well-founded, given the fact that how little protection victims currently receive in our society today. And recent police data also backs up this debate. Crimes committed by 13-year-olds have been rising recently, and in 2025, nearly half of the minors who were referred to family court, which is about 49.7% were 13 years old. And this isn't only limited to minor offenses. The problem is that most of the crimes that they have been accused were violent crimes, such as sexual assault, rape, and even murder. And so naturally, people are asking, does the setting of the age of 14 still make sense today?
Right, so it's a very serious concern now that you've said it's regarding very serious crimes as well. So there must be debates on both sides. For our viewers who are quite unfamiliar with this topic, could you explain for us what are the main arguments for lowering the age?
So, as I mentioned before, those in favor argue that the law should reflect today's reality. They point out that the standard has remained unchanged for more than 69 years since the Criminal Act was enacted in 1953, and it hasn't changed a bit. And while the criminal age hasn't changed, the legal age of adulthood and voting age have been lowered to 18 and 19 years old. So their argument is largely about consistency with the rest of our legal system. And for those who are opposed, on the other hand, focuses on what makes the juveniles different from other crimes. The fact that they still have the potential to return to the society, and that their offenses are often shaped less by their personal faults, but more by their abusive environments. And as a lawyer, I'm not taking sides, but there's a real legal concern here that hasn't got enough attention. The current proposal punishing 13-year-olds only for certain specific crimes creates a fairly awkward legal structure, where children of the exact same age are treated differently according to the type of offenses they committed. So that kind of selective exception can actually destabilize the legal framework itself, and ironically, it may end up producing outcome that feels even less fair.
So very strong arguments on both sides. But what about elsewhere in other countries? Attorney An, how does Korea's threshold compare with Europe or the U.S.?
That's a very interesting question. Before we talk about the criminal responsibility, we need to talk about the criminal punishment. There's two different concepts. So one thing is the age of criminal responsibility is one thing, and age of criminal punishment is the other. In cases in Korea, well, I think the way I see it, the Korean system is that the both age for the age of criminal responsibility and age of criminal punishment is the same, which is 14. So but however, in some countries they are different. So we talk about the differences between the other countries. And then Korea, so with 14s, right? So let's talk about the Germany case, which is very interesting because the Korean system is actually adopting many system and criminal system from German system or through the Japanese system, right? Right. But interesting about the German case is that very similar to the Korean system, the age of criminal responsibility and the age of criminal punishment are both 14. same, right? And then the difference I see that there's no overlapping jurisdictional issue between the juvenile court and the adult court. Means that the juvenile court will take control, I mean exclusive jurisdiction on the juvenile matter. Compared to the Korean case, I think that in certain age, between like a 14 to the before the minor age, the minors over 14s, they have the criminal law framework. Also, there's some special provision kick in applied to the juvenile case. So it's kind of overlapping in some way. And what interesting about happening is that in German case, if you are 13-year-old and kill somebody, and there will be no criminal responsibility and criminal punishment.
No punishment.
Yeah, just like Korea. No criminal penalty. It's not, but like Korea, we have like protective measure under the Juvenile Act. So we have to think about two different acts in this moment because there's a criminal law and there's a criminal act and juvenile act. So in both Korea and German, and they have a very similar approach that criminal law do not apply to the 14-year-old. That's the issue. And now your question is that whether should we lower the age to apply the criminal law applied to the age of 13. So that doesn't mean they will get rid of all the protection from the Juvenile Act. It's more like kind of in Korean system it's kind of more overlapping age of 13. But the German system is rather more exclusive jurisdiction by taking a separate court. And the UK, England is a very interesting case. I found it very interesting because the age of criminal responsibility and age of criminal response or the punishment are different. So the minimum age of criminal responsibility is 10, but however, they between age to 10 to 17, right? They have a different separate court system applied. And more surprisingly, for example, like if you're 13-year-old and you kill somebody in England, you know the maximum penalty in England? Life sentence. Life sentence with two conditions. The judge can decide the determination, how long will be the life sentence, and then time of parole. But it's a little bit linear than it's weaker than actually adult, adult penalty because adult sometimes the maximum penalty will be the life sentence without opportunity of parole, but any stable parole sentence. So that's condition. So it's very interesting how different. And then U.S. is more dynamic situation because there's no concept of a criminal responsibility. It's more like I describe as the minimum transferable age. Means that some cases in U.S. some serious crime can be transferred to the adult court even if that's the juvenile case. So what happened was that the criminal federal crime is about age 13, and then the state cases is vary by state, but of average about 14. But it's interesting about New York, right? Is 13-year-old. So just like we talk about 13-year-old, right? 13-year-old. That means that if you are 13-year-old and you kill someone in New York, state of New York, your case can be transferred to the adult court. That means what's the point? There are two differences, right? First one is that if you go to adult court, you can have you can actually send to the prison, real prison. And second is the criminal record will be keep on your file. So that's two difference, right? And Pennsylvania is more surprising. There's no minimum age. Transfer of age means that technically you're 7-year-old, you kill somebody, you can technically transfer to the adult court in Pennsylvania. Yeah. And then California is about 16 years. Seems like very reasonable. So it's really different. Depends on jurisdiction and their societal, the thinking and then cultural thing, the many factors.
So it seems like the density of the crime itself is really important when it comes to these kinds of
U.S. cases and U.S. and UK, yes.
Then having heard all of these comparisons, Attorney An, do you think South Korea should also consider applying something similar to that?
It's very complicated cases, but so it's hard to make a big line rule. But so one thing about the U.S. approach and UK and U.S. England, right? England, the English approach is that they use the offense-based approach, means that they focus on not only the age, but what kind of act they do. So it's more interesting about English case, England is what happened was that even if they have a separate juvenile court system, the way they have penalty, right? The penalty is not linear as Korea, because in Korea they try to get less, try to give more protection. But in UK and US, if you commit very serious crime, sometimes the idea is that if you commit a crime like adult, you will charged and tried like adult. It's very, very strong public sentiment there. So that's the big difference, I guess, compared to U.S. approach. The lowering 14 to 13 is not really big change to me. Yeah. Yep.
Right. So it's been quite a while since Korea saw a change in this age system, but now we are trying to lower the threshold from 14 to 13. Then, Attorney An, so if Korea does lower the age, how could we select the number? Whether it's 12 or 13, what do you think about this?
First of all, it's Attorney Kim.
Oh, excuse me.
Before we delve into the answer, I was very much intrigued to listen to what Attorney An is saying, that there is quite no limit in the UK or US or in the German section. And I believe that the sentiment here is quite different from the Northeast Asia and the American part, because I believe especially Korea has the sentiment to protect children when they're at their age. Especially we need to ask whether they have the capacity to understand the consequences of their actions when we punish them in a criminal record. So as returning to the question itself, I think if the age should be lowered, I think we need to first consider that we need to, as I mentioned before, children's responsibility and their capacity to understand the consequences here. And we also need to consider that whether lowering the age would actually help prevent the crime itself. We shouldn't change the law simply because a lot of the crime are happening to be frequent at age 13. And some people even point out to the fact that the international standards made by the UN has offered 12 years old to be the criminalized appropriate number. However, unlike the previous record, the UN Committee on the Rights of the Child has recently recommended raising the minimum age to at least 14 years old. So it seems quite the opposite approach, I believe. So rather than debating whether the exact number should be 12 or 13, I think we need to look at this issue in a more in-depth factors, such as we need to consider the development of the criminal capacity in children. We need to consider the actual impact on preventing the crime and reoffending. And lastly, we need to know what kind of changes fits with the consistency of our overall criminal justice system.
Right, that's very important. But as our Attorney Kim has just pointed out, some countries like Europe and Australia have gone the other way and raised their age threshold. What are your thoughts on this, Attorney An?
That's very interesting. This one is also very interesting because when I first did the question, I thought similar way to your thing, but actually I did research and it's a very interesting twist here. Okay, let me talk about this Scotland, for example. And in 2021, they raised from 8 to 12. So Scotland was one of the lowest European country. The minimum age is 8. So the criminal responsibility 8, but they raised to 12 to 2021. There's one case actually raised it, and Denmark is a very exciting country. What happened was their age of criminal responsibility was 15, but they lowered it 2010 to 14, 1 year older. But 2 years later, they raised it up. So it's very interesting that. So they'll debate on this one. This is very, very interesting. That why they did it. This question is that according to the media's, and they're saying basically that research showing little evidence that the lowering the age does not have a significant impact on the crime. So the lowering age does not necessarily preventing, crime or the decreasing, the reoffending. Basically, that's very interesting. I think the idea is that we have to realize the phrase that the crime never stops, but we just try to find the best way to control it, right? From that perspective, it's more like a maintenance, maintaining the crime situation. That's sending a very interesting signal. But the Austrian case is very interesting. Austria's age of criminal responsibility is 10, but Austria is also a federal system. So the Austrian central, the capital territory, they raised it to 12, right? 10 to 12, right? And then 1 year later, they lower down to 10. So go up and down. Okay, right? Right. And however, the Northern Territory, which is a sister territory of Australia, and the like they changed it to 10 to 12, right? I'm sorry. The Ocean Capital Territory, they raised to 10 to 14 last year. And the next one, Northern Territory, which is the north side of Australia, they raise up and roll down again. And then there's some debate on between the government and the critics, right? Government basically saying that earlier intervention will give more choices for the court and the police to deal with the juvenile offenses. On the other end, and the contrary, the critics, talk up, arguing that the early, intervention, basically early exposure to the other, criminal system will actually, basically increase the risk of the reoffending. Basically, they're not really saving the kid from, committing same crime again. So repeating the crime. So there's, I think, public debate on the Australian, especially Northern Territory there.
Right.
So that depends on your political view. You think that this was saving small number of kids from the, that side, or protecting the large portion of the society. That's really dilemma we're taking. So that's things happen. So it's not always going down. Sometimes going up, or sometimes going back and forth.
Right, we're seeing a lot of adjustments, definitely, and maybe this is the reason why we're seeing a lot of debate on this. So because we want to make it effective in reducing the crime frequencies as well. Now, when we turn to what comes next, Attorney Kim, once the government finishes gathering a public opinion on this, what is the next legal steps that would be needed to actually change this threshold?
So as for what happens after the public consultation process, the remaining legal steps are quite simple. First of all, because the age of criminal responsibility is tied to both Article 9 of the Criminal Act and also the Juvenile Act, we should, both laws should be amended together to keep them aligned with each other. And going back to the procedural part, so when the government first passed a revision to both laws through a cabinet meeting, then they have to approve and signed by the president by himself. And then we were going to formally submit that bill to the National Assembly for vote. And overall, all the process will definitely include defining what kind of the target crimes are going to be and how they will be practiced in the law. And also, I'm aware of the fact that the President Lee Jae-myung has already made a statement today to urge the cabinet to move quickly on this matter. So I expect we'll see these formal steps moving through the National Assembly fairly soon.
We'll have to keep close tabs on the latest moves on that. But finally, before we let you both go, so changing the age alone wouldn't really solve every question, of course. So what else do you think Korea could actually do to strengthen victim protection and rehabilitation and other safeguards?
So I think we need to consider what this law is for. I mean, its real goal is to reduce the serious juvenile crime and to protect juvenile victims. And in order to be effective, simply lowering the age itself is not enough. We need to build the right infrastructure and a solid correctional system supported. And also, as Attorney An mentioned it before, simply by lowering the age itself, it's not going to do its job by its own. So, and also we have this saying in the legal community that real justice and real victim protection have to go in hand in any legal reform in order to be very effective. So I believe the government and overall society will practice, and it will be pour their whole energy to have this reformation all together and make this proposal effective.
Right, so all-out efforts would be really necessary in reducing this crime. What about Attorney An?
Oh, just maybe like to make a last comment about it, and then I propose that maybe the government, Korean government, doesn't have to, take or leave situation. I think that if it's the UK case or the Australia case, perhaps you can have like temporary measure. Let's see what happens. Apply it for like 1 or 2 years, and then the public will see what happens. You get the statistics, and is it really lower the crime rate, or does really preventive measure? Also, we can have maybe, I don't know. This is my creative idea, is that maybe we can just divide like some area like Gyeonggi-do or Gangwon-do, and just apply that like UK, the England, and the different systems, right? Well, I know the Korean system is different from the UK, but I think you can play like creative ideas, see, because I want to see the actual number, data. Actually really working is more persuasive than talking about the numbers. Is it really happening any direction? I think that because some countries, they're changing direction because of data. They have it after they're changing. Sometimes they lower and go back and forth because of data they got it.
Right, definitely. So we're also in the process of brainstorming, and ultimately just changing the age alone won't really solve the entire
Stop
problem.
talking, just do it. Do something, right?
We will look forward to further measures on that. But as for now, we'll have to leave our discussion here tonight. Thank you so much for your insights, Attorney An.
Thank you.
And Attorney Kim.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. And that'll be all from us on Within the Frame tonight. Be sure to tune in again next time as we continue to explore the stories that matter. Till then, stay informed and engaged.